The governor of the Bank of England, Mr. Andrew Bailey, says interest rates may stay high for longer than expected amid stubbornly high inflation. Speaking at the European Central Bank annual conference in Sintra, Portugal, the Apex Bank's governor said it was clear financial market expected several more interest rate rises. In May, UK inflation was 8.7%, the same level reported in April, and the highest of any major advanced economy. Mr. Bailey said the most important problem facing the UK was core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, and is currently 2 percentage points higher than in the Eurozone or US. Now, I'm being joined by the founder, Wealth Hackers, joining us from the United Kingdom, Mr. Olubenga Onifade. Thank you so much for your time. It's good to have you on the program.
Good afternoon.
Well, interesting. Looking at the figures here, 8.7% is where inflation stands at the moment. And we also see that the BOE has increased rates 12 times to 4.5%. First, let me ask you, why is the inflation in UK, why does it remain so high?
I mean, that's something we are all apparently, from what you said now, they will be increasing it further to 5%. So that makes it 13th time consecutively that they've been increasing it. Why has it become so high? So we are all now getting used to the term sticky inflation. So inflation here is actually being said as being sticky. And why has it been so high? There's quite a few myriad of reasons. Some of them people tend not to agree, but one of them is Brexit. We still have the pre-existing element of Brexit still here. That's number one. Number two, of course, we had COVID. You could say everyone had COVID, of course, and the UK was actually hit very hard during COVID period as well. And one of the core things that happened with COVID was the fact that a lot of people, even though while quite a few people have reported back to work, there's still quite a lot of people who haven't reported back to work, and they decided to take early retirement. And as a result of that, it rolls back to what I mentioned earlier, which is Brexit. So there's a labor shortage. Most of the European unions, they've actually returned back to their country. So there's labor shortage as a result of that. So it's pushed things quite high. Productivity is very low. And so we actually expected inflation to come down, but it was actually a shocker when it went up by more than half a percentage point higher than pre-existing, and of course than the entire EU. The other thing is the fact that when inflation, or sorry, should I say, when the whole pandemic and the whole energy crisis started, European Union, mostly Germany and France, they were quickly able to act, while UK delayed in acting, capping energy prices, and of course, pushing. We just got to realize now that it pushed the European Union into a recession over the winter, while UK is now still grappling with the high cost of energy. Even though next month things are supposed to be coming down gradually, so it's quite late into things. The government didn't act as fast enough, and of course, things are going to start gradually coming down from hopefully next month. So because of that, it's affected people's buying power. The pockets are being hit harder, and so everyone's actually gone on strike. Industries businesses have actually put prices back up, and they're passing it back onto back onto consumers. So it's actually been sticky, and there's no one or two ways to deal with it. They're just trying right now, the government or the Bank of England.
And soaring food and energy bills have not helped matters. They've continued to help drive this up very seriously. But let me ask you, with all of the why is it not coming down like other similar economies?
Yeah, so like I did mention, it's actually been very sticky. One of the things that they've actually been doing, which is, of course, people expected interest rates to drive the price of inflation down, which is the age-old 100-year practice of economics, really. So you raise interest rates, and then of course people get affected, and by that way you're forced to demand destruction in a way. You're forced to keep your money in the banks, and that way things will generally just come down. You will have to save. You'll be forced to save. But because of this happening, people have actually been protesting, and they've been pushing. So people wages gone up. Number one. Interest rates has gone up, people wages gone up as a result of the countering that inflation, and of course, so which means while interest rates has gone up and your wage has gone up, but of course prices have gone up as well. So the consumers or the manufacturers, they've pushed up the prices further because this whole thing gets, it's a domino effect, really, domino effect. So things get affected and they push up the prices. So while you destroy inflation with interest rates and you raise wages to counter that as a result, and of course when you get to the market thinking you're going to have a better buying power, the shops and businesses, they push up the prices as well. So either way, it just sticks with us, and they just have to find one of the other ways to deal with it. But one more key thing, which has kind of helped America, who's back down to about 3% level right now, was America, they focused on two things, both destroying inflation, which we know is not going to be destroyed overnight, but at the same time they focused on growth. But I think UK was core focus was on inflation without having to focus on growth. So by that, it's been proving a bit difficult, a lot more difficult than they thought it was, and so you're not able to grow while inflation's actually been sticky, but you're not able to grow on the other hand. So it just stays there. So all of that is a combination of effects, which has just made it say, hey, it's going to take us longer before we get. And one of the other things people are suggesting is probably just push the economy into a recession. But for now, we are at an impasse, if I can say.
Interesting stuff, Mr. Onifade. But let's move on with our discussion. And I was reading through the impact of inflation on the masses, on the people, man on the street. When you buy milk for £1 and now you're buying it £1 and more than £1, whatever that is, that hike in price is what spells what inflation is, and it tells on the money in your wallet or whatever you have in the bank. But I would ask you, even with the war in Russia and Ukraine, I'm sure there must have been an impact of that also on the UK's economy, particularly shortage of grains and, of course, gas issues and all of that. Can we also speak around that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Russia is number one exporter of grains. Sorry, Ukraine is the number one exporter of grains, and of course, Russia, one of the biggest exporters when it comes to oil and of course gas. Apparently, UK had some reserves, and of course, the warmer winter and the summer has actually helped, and of course, the projection as well has helped. So that's kind of helped but again, as a result of just trying to kill the war, as far as without pun intended, as soon as possible, people decided to pivot their oil supplies to other countries. So what does that mean then? That means things have to go up because it just doesn't take overnight to be able to price all this oil, and you cannot just cap it because you don't produce this oil, so you just cannot cap it. So that's number one impact. So energy has just gone high through the roof. So while there's inflation, there's high energy costs. You've got to have what the country's actually done is they printed more money and they had to give it back to the citizens to help out. And when you print money, which is QE, quantitative easing, you are effectively adding back to inflation. You said cost of things are high, so you actually turn this piece of paper, you turn it to cash, and of course, it's going to affect inflation. So that's number one. Number two is we're talking about the grains. So the price of food has gone up by 19%, more than inflation prices. So that on itself doesn't really help again. So and then again, of course, there's travel costs. If there's energy costs, that means airlines, they're going to have to push up their prices, and they spiral into travel costs as well. So, I mean, one of the things Jeremy Hunt said was that he's acknowledged that this is very difficult for families, but people think, you did say, I mean, Rishi Sunak, while he was getting, vying for the job of the prime minister, he did say he was going to halve inflation by the end of the year. That's yet to be seen. But also, mortgage costs has just gone up. Some people's mortgages doubled. People cannot afford to pay the mortgages, and they've put their house back on the market. But again, the landlords have passed it on to the tenants too. So everything is just affecting everything, and it's just sticky. So it becomes sticky. But again, so how has it affected people? It's affected from the cost of food to the, which is, mainly because, but bulk of this these countries which is engaging in a war, they're huge agricultural exporters. Ukraine is a breadbasket. Likewise, Russia, they're huge breadbaskets of Europe, if you can say. And UK mostly they mostly import most of these goods that they consume here, or that we consume here. So that's one. So importation of food costs has gone up, energy's gone up. People cannot actually go on holiday, so they do what they call staycation. So that's another impact. People have been staying home, and then of course the mortgages has gone up as well, because the more you raise interest rate, the more the mortgages. And then of course, while people's salaries gone up, I mean it's gone better than America by, I think, 1.5%. But at the same time, the cost of goods on the side, because people keep passing it back on. No one's here to absorb the inflation. So that's another big deal. So there's impacts all around. Everyone's actually been hit, and of course, even the businesses where they've been pressurized and been faced with a higher corporation tax. I think it's gone to 25%. So again, everything's just passed around, and no one is not. Everyone has been hit in all ways.
Mr. Nifade, putting interest rates up, like you alluded to, will make borrowing more expensive. And when borrowing is expensive, business cannot expand. They cannot employ more people. And also, those with mortgages, like you also alluded to, will pay more. And that's a very serious thing at the moment. Now, would you say the government is doing enough at the moment? How would you react to efforts by government?
I think there's a pressure on the government right now. I mean, I've never seen the impact of strikes as much as I have seen it this year. We've got strikes from the teachers to the doctors, to the train drivers, literally passport offices. That everyone is just literally on strike. And if you think about the amounts, the doctors, for example, junior doctors, before they went on strike, they were demanding 35%. So again, the government is actually taking off all this, the levies which has been levied onto people. So while it looks like they're not doing enough, I think they've just been a bit slower to acting, which is quite unfortunate. And of course, when you look at the ruling party, they're supposed to get on the job. There's been more internal wrangling between them, which is quite unfortunate. Well, people have got more things to press on with, really.
The UK Prime Minister at the time met with President Joe Biden sometime a few weeks ago, I guess, and a lot of talks around trade and strengthening relationship was raised at that gathering. How would you react to this, and what more kind of handshake do you expect between the United Kingdom and United States at this time?
I mean, UK's always prided themselves on as being the key ally to United States. They call it a special relationship. But one of the things America's actually been trying to do, and they kind of see this as an opportunity. I mean, America has got the same level of oil reserves as Nigeria, and the number, in terms of number 8 in the world, which they really do not dig. I know, President Trump, who's not the president, has been pressing Biden, saying, just get to dig this oil. But that's for America. UK is talking about an alternative, which is fracking, and they say that's extremely geologically dangerous, and it's not great for the environment. But one of the things America has been trying to push is to fill in the gap or the void where Russia has left. So while America's got they got the gas reserves, which they could liquefy and send to Europe. They call it the freedom gas. They could sell it for cheap. But UK's actually been thinking, for infrastructure's sake, and it's cheaper to get it from Russia. But now America think this is an opportunity. They could fill in the gap. They could fill in the void. And of course, there's obviously more relationship with UK going to America, or the Prime Minister going to America. UK paying it slightly a lot more in terms of wages rising higher. They think they probably could poach more people from the United States, make UK more attractive. That's number one. Number two, UK being the European head office when it comes to the finances and businesses, and the fact that people are relocating their head offices abroad now since the UK left the EU. So that's another way UK just trying to poach and encourage, strengthen the relationship, but at the same time encourage the citizens to make UK be more attractive, while at the same time they can buy some of these American goods. Especially the natural resources, which they could fill in the void for Russia right now. So these are opportunities where it could be mutually benefiting, but at the same time there are little to no red tapes at all for each other. When it comes to cross-border relationship, you haven't really got the stress or the headache of a visa. It's only a transportation cost, and that's about it really.
Honestly, the Prime Minister has a lot of work. Mr. Sunak has a lot of work ahead of him to try to, stabilize that economy and all of that. But what will be your recommendations moving on if you are to suggest some ways out, maybe some quick wins moving on, while we also a minute on what's happening to price of foods, vegetables, and salads. At the time, I heard there was even a shortage of that. Can we wrap up on that note?
Absolutely, yes. One of the key things people are saying is, while he's such a good communicator, when he started, he rolled up his sleeves and got the job started straight away. One of the key things people are thinking is, how about before it gets to that point of strikes, how about you engage more with the key stakeholders, while people are demanding 35, they probably would not get 35, but engage before it gets to that point where they don't even have to have disruptions at all. Because when they have disruptions, it's costing more, the NHS more. I think one of the things they're trying to do now, which it depends on where you are. You might have to agree or disagree. Really, have some of this law out there. Implement the law whereby some key departments, health, for example, or defense, cannot actually go on strike, because it does affect. You look at 70,000 appointments being pushed back for as a result of 1 day or 2 day strike. 250,000 being pushed back appointments. So that's another one. Again, when it comes to food, people have been talking about there's not enough being produced in the UK. But again, UK is trying to bring people, they call them fruit pickers, etc. Depends on who you are, an advocate of Brexit or not. I'm not sure, but at the same time, people thought, okay, how about a special visas for people to come and work in, health sector? At the same time, treat the food workers as a pandemic, as a very, very extremely risk area where people are needed, and we've got to make it more attractive. So these are all the things, seek with the key departments, or from the Home Office, so they can collaborate more instead of firefighting. These are the things which part of the recommendation, which is actually on ground, and of course from myself as well, I would suggest.
Interesting conversation as usual. We'll follow up with you, as usual, Mr. Olugbenga Onifade, who's a startup founder, the World Hackers. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. We really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.